This episode is brought to you by the Pelora Group.
Welcome back to Winning Through Culture.
I'm Tim Flanagan.
And I'm Amanda Kramer.
When culture's not a priority, people aren't a priority. Having an intentional focus helps you as a leader remain impactful and relevant as you move your business forward.
Welcome to Winning Through Culture.
Welcome back to another episode of Winning Through Culture. Amanda and I are excited to be with you today to put a bow on our how-to series. If you've been following this particular series, we had a great conversation with Dr. Beth Kaplan, and then that was followed up by an awesome discussion with Gary Ridge, the retired CEO of WD-40. So Amanda and I today are going to finish this one up with a conversation around just kind of finishing the year with intention and really kind of putting a bow on how do you finish this year while you're simultaneously getting ready for next year and not completely be exhausted at the end of December and have some energy for 2026 with some gusto and momentum as you go into that new year. So, Amanda, good to be with you this morning.
Yes, always. And I'm excited for this one because we're in the thick of it right now.
We are.
Year end happening. The holidays are upon us. I know the answer I get often is when you say, hey, how are things going? Or how are you? It's like, I'm busy. I have family obligations. I have, professional obligations. So I think this episode would be really cool for us to talk about how you can kind of block out maybe some of that noise at year end so you can start the year of 2026 from a place of intention and being deliberate, both personally, emotionally, and professionally. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah. And I know for me, this is an easy one to discuss because it's a challenge I face every year, which is how do you finish the year you are in, achieving your goals? How do you get ready for the new year? So come January, you're actually not like, okay, what are we doing? And then how do you be present, to your point, for your family through the holidays and not get sick, which I'm prone to do this time of year. So I can certainly speak from experience of what not to do in this episode.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, right, it's really boiling it down to staying connected during this very busy season to the people that are in your community and part of your organization. It's having those small wins that create momentum, as you talked about, right? Like, what are some of those things? And you can talk to the things maybe you shouldn't do, but also we'll talk about some of the things that you should do.
You should do, yes.
You should do, right? To keep that momentum. And then really focusing on your cultural mindset. So at the end of the day, this podcast, and if you've been with us for a while, it's all about helping create relevant, impactful, and honestly resilient cultures when you think about the seasons of change that you're going to go through. And typically year end, there is some type of change that comes along with that for most businesses. So I think a great place for us to start is just acknowledging that the holidays and year end typically equals hustle for many of us. We're all juggling those work deadlines, family demands, holiday expectations. I know I have a kind of like a family planning meeting with my husband every Sunday, and we literally looked at the calendar for December this last time because I was like, okay, well, we have Thanksgiving. That's great. Now we're looking into further in December, and I kid you not, we have like 6 holiday parties in like 10 days between my son's school and work and all the things. And I was like, I don't quite know how we're doing all of this. So I think it's a good way to kind of take a second and reflect on the tension because there's always going to be competition for your time.
And attention.
Yeah, it will always exist. And that is not necessarily just particular to the holiday season and year end. That's all the time. But I think it's really where you're able to kind of sit down. And this is one of those how-to items that I would lean us into is how are you replacing? Because I know oftentimes when I ask the question to people, which I already mentioned, is like, how are things going? How's the holiday season? Whatever it is, they're like, I'm busy. And that is an answer that I used to give as well. And I've really worked on how I don't just say I'm busy or I'm good. How are you? Right? You want to give a little bit more and be a little bit more present in your return when you get questions like that. And I think a really great way to replace I'm busy, you can say blank, whatever it is just not a priority for me right now. It will be at whatever time. So I know that statement sometimes might feel a little uncomfortable because you're like, wait, I'm saying something isn't a priority. And oftentimes people forget that priority is singular. We often say priorities. And yes, there are a lot of things competing for your time, And that's why I think this kind of statement really lands well, especially if you're doing it internally for yourself. You might want to craft it a little bit different as you are speaking to someone else, but you have the opportunity to say, okay, X, and I'll use my example, this holiday gathering is not a priority over this other holiday gathering because of the energy it gives me or the ability for me to be around X, Y, and Z family or what have you. And I think that's a really nice way to kind of reframe when you're constantly thinking about the hustle of the season. I don't know. Do you do something like that, Tim? Like, what's kind of your barometer?
Well, I mean, I used to pride myself on being busy. I hate to say that was like a badge of honor. It is not a badge of honor anymore, I'm happy to say. And I think to your point, the lesson that I learned, which I have to be reminded of very frequently, is every yes is a no to something else.
Very true.
And, I struggle with that because I like to say yes. I don't like to say no. I like the possibilities and all the wonderful stuff. So we got two people that struggle to say no.
Yep.
And I think the way you reframe that is, what is and isn't a priority at this point in time, I think is really important. And it's okay. The other adage is if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So to your point, the word priority was never put in the English language as a plural word. It was a singular word. And yet we use the term priorities all the time. So I would say this is a great time of year to be intentional about what are the main, and I would say in the 5 key areas of your life, what is the priority right now? What is the priority in your business life, your physical life, your spiritual life, your family life, at least in those 4 categories. And then the 5th one maybe being your social life. And pick something. Because again, as I said, I was very famous for a long time of wearing myself out and getting incredibly sick right around Christmas every year.
Yeah.
I mean, I pneumonia a couple of years ago, couldn't get out of bed. My wife's like, really, this is how we're going to finish the year? So I am committed the last couple of years to not doing that. And it's because I have picked, what's going to be a priority in those key areas of my life. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but you said something that I think has to be the foundation of that priority, which is your presence.
Yeah. Well, and you have to make the choice to stay connected to those things.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that people kind of get lost in, at least when I've shared this previously, is like, okay, but I'm saying so-and-so or this project or whatever it is not a priority. It's not that you're saying it's not a priority forever.
It's just not a priority now.
For this week, for this
this
day,
season.
for this season, It's not a priority. And that's totally okay. And I know as all of, podcasters do, right? Like we're recording and this is going to release in December, but we're still in the last couple of days of November right now. And it's interesting because I've heard a lot of people and I've seen some growing momentum that people are practicing what is called November. And that is, it's catchy. Yes, but you can do it any month. You can do it any time. And that's okay. You can start saying no to the people, the places, the projects, the things that drain your energy, right? Like you have the choice to say, I know this is not serving me or will not serve me right now or this week or this day or this moment. This is something that I can spend time and energy on in 2 months, in a week. Or I need to block time on my calendar on Friday. I have an admin day and that's where that's going to live instead of allowing it to consume you. And I think that that's a really great practice. It doesn't have to be in November, but it's a really great practice for you to instill so you have a little bit more control over that. Okay, I am saying no to something and I'm saying yes to something else, and the opposite can be true too.
Yeah. And you speak of something around intention. And, there's intentionality, which is what do I intend to do? And then there's deliberateness, which is what do I actually do? And let's talk a little bit, because again, I'm big on making lists. My wife gives me a list once a week of things that I need to do. And I do need it written down, and I like to check it off my to-do list. This is a good time of year, though, because, to your point, with the busyness of the holidays and family and travel and year end, those to-do lists can become very long and overwhelming. So let's talk a little bit about a variation of the to-do list, which is the to-be list.
Yeah. Well, and this came from one of the sessions as part of the Purpose Summit. And I know you had talked about, we did the episodes with Tim Kelly and Beth Kaplan and Gary Ridge. And these are all wonderful humans that I would be so elated to have in a room together again at some point in the future. And one of the things at the Purpose Summit was this concept, right? That we oftentimes forget that we are human beings and we act as though we're just human doings. And as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as managers, whatever hat title you're wearing today, you think about the things that you need to do. So that's that to-do list, which is great. Everybody should have. I do it. I know I talked about this before, but like I have a huddle with myself every day. Here are the 3 to 5 things. Oftentimes it's 3, but here are the 3 to 5 things that have to get done today. And I blend personal and professional because I am one person. So like those things, if they don't get done, it's not a successful day. And it's a blend, right? We talk a lot about balance. So point being is every time you have a to-do list, I like to have a list. I like to cross it off. I love to put a check mark or to scratch through something. So you and I share that. But the challenge, I think, is to define when we are in that space of being a human being. So what do we need to be right now versus what do we need to do? So I know I said this kind of example a little bit earlier, but instead of saying I need to finish X project, it's more of I need to be focused and courageous in conversation so that X gets done. So that comes back to the thought process of we're not all going to be able to functionally do everything that might be in our realm of responsibility, but we can very much so own how we show up and how we are being deliberate with what we're doing versus what someone else, and I'm speaking more in the professional sense, on our team is able to take on. And you do have to keep in mind the capacity, and a lot of people talk about like how full is your plate, like all of those things. But if you can focus on who you need to be in that moment, in that project, versus what you need to do, I think you're much more likely to have an opportunity to enroll others and get more done efficiently. And I don't know if you've experienced that, Tim, as we've kind of progressed through the years of working together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of something I've been working on this quarter and in the business, and it's easy to identify what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, where I've been hung up is who do I need to be in order to effectively get that done? And that's been something I've actually struggled with because, my high D personality is let's just go do this. And yet from a relational perspective, how I show up in that interaction with another person is super important.
Right.
But that's, again, the intentionality and the deliberateness of slowing down enough to recognize I got to be somebody to be effective in this realm, not just go do this conversation or this task. And I think that's the big difference for me is, tasks are an important part of execution and getting stuff done, but how we show up ultimately is the fiber, if you will, that builds the relational capital that sustains great culture.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about this before I feel like I say this, but we should always just hit record when we start talking.
Our outtakes.
Yeah, exactly. For outtakes, hot takes. Let's say that in a very good way. But point being is, we had the conversation about how do we really want people to feel when they interact with us as leaders this season and year end and the hustle. And as we kind of come off of a season of gratitude, which I think we practice always, but it's a very large focus for many organizations in the month of November around the Thanksgiving timeframe. And we just had an opportunity to be in all of our larger, I'm going to say population areas of our organization and simply spend time with those that we consider our clients and that ultimately are part of what we've built as, our daily life. And I know we use that as examples for this podcast, but we've really built a community. And every year I sound like a broken record because it's literally my favorite week of the year, the week before Thanksgiving. And because I have an opportunity just to engage in a different way, not that I don't focus on it all the time, because I do, that's my responsibility in our organization, but it's really cool to see everybody stepping into that space and it allows you, I think, because I had so much to do during that week of things, but at the end of the day, it was who I needed to be and how I wanted people to leave my presence. Like, how did I want them to leave feeling? And it's always interesting, like the notes I get after, and I'm sure you do too, but it's a small thing that we do and it seems very large. And it is because it's really being large in presence. We literally have an opportunity to touch every single person that's part of our organization in a week. And like that is kind of, for the hundreds of people that includes, that can feel a little daunting at times. But the individual conversations that you walk away with, the things that I learned, I literally sat at lunch with an individual that I have known, I kid you not, for 14 years. And I learned probably 6 new things about him and his family. And it was just a really deep, rich conversation that outside of that opportunity, that small opportunity that I had, it was a win all around, right? And like those are nuggets that I hold on to. I know we talk a lot about if you want to know what somebody's favorite candy is or color, go to Amanda. But it's true. Like I know those things and it comes from those conversations, but you have to create the time and the space and you have to fully be present. I mean, I kid you not, it was like 45 minutes with this one person and that was amazing because I know so much now that, and again, I have spent 14 years knowing this person and I just feel so much more connected to him now, which is just really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think again, the presence in a busy week, because you and Ashley are responsible for pulling that week together. And I know it's I call it your Super Bowl of the year.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And pretty sure I'm familiar with the conversation you're referring to because I remember seeing you in this conversation pretty deeply. But I think it just speaks to the reality that the presence, you could have said, oh, I'm just going to go touch everybody in the room and say hi and thank you for being here.
I mean, I found time to do that too.
And you still did that, but you got the chance to slow down and be present and really connect with an important person in the organization. At least I think I know who you're referring to. That's not as relevant, but to your point, it's interesting because you already have a really good relationship with that person. You hear you say you learned some new things. And you never, unless you had taken the time to slow down and really be present in that moment, it would have been hard to probably do that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's creating that environment and that I know can be hard in a sense of, but it's a small thing you can do. It's just choosing to be versus choosing to do, as you said.
Yep.
So yes, did I pop around, make sure that I talked to every single person? I absolutely did. But I was intentional about the seat that I chose when I sat down because I knew that person needed it, and we kind of joke, you and I do. And I think we talked about this, I don't know, 5 or 6 podcasts ago, but there's, that day where you just, that somebody needs a hug or that somebody just needs I don't need you to tell me what's going on, but I need you to know that I'm here for you, right? Like, it's that sense, it's that spidey sense. And that is something that is a skill and you do have to work on it. And I knew that person needed me in that way. And that was really cool. Like not that that entire week wasn't wonderful, but that just kind of was the icing on the cake. I feel like, I really created even more relational capital with that particular individual by really choosing to be present with him for that 45 minutes of lunch, which was really great.
That's awesome.
And I think the thought process here, right, for those that are listening is these are just things that Tim and I have found that really work well. And they are small opportunities that you can instill over time. We're not saying like, hey, you need to go and create this entire week of giving that you are going around and seeing everybody. I realize that might not be feasible, but you do have an opportunity to choose to be present in the moments that you do have with those that are part of your community. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I think just from a contextual reference point, what Amanda's referring to is every year, the week before Thanksgiving, we do now 3 lunches, one in Raleigh, one in Winston-Salem, one in Charlotte, invite all of our advisors, their teams, our team, and have a giving thanks series of lunches. Definitely is one of my favorite times of the year in general, this time from Thanksgiving through Christmas. From a personal perspective, obviously, we're talking about the chaos of business, which we'll come back to in a minute. But that context is that week we are out in the different markets we serve with the advisors and their teams, just having a really great lunch. We do a food drive for a local food pantry and have a lot of great connection, little prayer time, little Q&A at the end of lunch, even if I'm asking myself questions because no one else did. That was kind of funny.
We also had trivia this year too.
Oh, that's right. We did.
It
have
was
trivia.
a nice addition.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving trivia.
Yeah, that's right.
So you can make it a little different. But yes, that's one thing that we do in our daily life, as I like to say, that I think really creates that space in the hustle of the holiday season for us to slow down, be present, and really just be grateful for the community that we are continuing to build, the people that are a part of it. And ultimately, when we talk about the business side of things, right? Like our advisors are our clients. And so when we think about what we're doing to support and honor them, both personally, emotionally, and professionally, that's one way that we're able to do that consistently. And everybody, I mean, like we're running out of space. Like every year, I'm like, we're going to max out these rooms, which is great. It's a great problem to have. So, and that kind of leans me into like, as you're thinking about, because we do have the opportunity at those lunches to kind of reflect a little bit on how we're going to close out the year. And we give a little bit of a plug for whatever that next year is going to hold. So in this case, 2026. And I think one of the unique things that we're able to lean into is that there are really no years in which we're not focused on either winning or learning. And that might be a weird way to say that, but I don't really see any year as a losing year. Now, you might be behind in your business, you might not have finished where you wanted to finish, but I think about that in the terms of, okay, so what did I learn from that year that we can take forward into 2026? And then if you just had like your best year ever, like nothing could have gone any better than that, then okay, what do you need to recreate? How can you keep that momentum as you kind of go into it? And some of the prompts that we use when we talk to individuals about reflecting on the year that they're in and trying to finish versus thinking about going into the new year is like, what surprised you about, in this case, right, 2025? What surprised you in 2025? There's likely something, whether it was positive, maybe negative or neutral, like there was something that surprised you within the year. So I think that's a great reflection question. The one that you always ask, and we say it a little bit differently every time, but like, where did you grow the most in this particular year? And that might be in one of the 5-point areas. That might be specifically in your business and honing a little bit further into that. But I don't know, do you want to lean into a little bit about like that growth component year over year, that kind of reflection question?
At a personal level or just kind of a macro level? Or either level? Yeah, I mean, I think that one of our core values as a firm is growth. That's one of my personal values. So the question for me always is, where am I growing? And like I said, I kind of look at the 5 different areas of my life now, not just one dimensional. I used to be very one dimensional and everything was seen through the lens of business and everything else was secondary. So that's probably the area I grew the most in this year, is not viewing my life through, as I jokingly say, my top 3 priorities are all business and then everything follows that. And that's, harsh admission that was something that, if I'm being real honest with myself, I kind of did. So this year, from a growth perspective, was more focused on letting go of things so that I could be much more attentive to my relationships closest to me, family-wise, and take much better care of my health, which was probably the easiest thing for me to give up. Just say, well, I'll get around to that. And I'm not getting any younger, so it's kind of hard to put off your health and not suffer the consequences of that. So that's been, for me, where I've grown the most, I'd say, on the business side. From a business perspective, it's learning to let go of things and not feeling that I've got to do it all. That, leaning into Audrey, as a business partner, the team, you, and letting go of things that, I had a narrative, oh my gosh, I got to do this. I'm not going to ask anybody else to do it. So that's another area I've grown a lot in. And that letting go starts to open up capacity, which gives me the capacity to be better relationally, gives me the capacity to focus on my health and be more present.
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of bleeds into that like kind of third reflection question that we're, as leaders, always asking ourselves, like, what did you learn about your leadership over this last year? Like maybe it is something where I need to learn to delegate more. If we kind of put that in EOS terms, as we like to talk about, like letting go of the vine and having the opportunity to really build that relationship and then let that person take flight, like let them do it. knowing that you've provided them with the tools and resources and that you're there with a little bit of a safety net if necessary, but that they have to do it their own way too. Like there might be a process they need to follow, but it's going to look and feel a little bit different than how you would do it.
Yep.
And I know that that's something that every year I feel like we're kind of stepping into. Like, what did you learn about your leadership over the course of this past year?
What did you learn
What did I learn? That's a great
about
question.
your leadership?
Yeah. So I don't even think I've said this on the podcast, but I am having my second child in the new year. And so this is one of those things where like going through that process the first time, I kid you not, I had like a 6-page like prep document for the person who was going to do all the things, right, while I was gone. And this year we literally had a conversation, and it's wonderful because she has been with me through both of these pregnancies, which has been great. But the thing is that we have such a give and take relationship that we talked about it. And it's like, cool. She's like, I know exactly what needs to get done while you're out. Like, I don't need to create a 6-page document. And I'm like, this is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm able to let go. Like, she's going to do things her own way. And that's wonderful. Like, we've talked through what needs to get accomplished. She has her like checklist, so to speak. Like, these things have to get done. Everything else, you can say, this is not a priority right now. It'll be a priority when Amanda gets back. And so that's something that I've learned about myself this year is like giving her those same tools that I use instead of just expecting that she kind of picks up on them over time, is like being really deliberate about here's what I would say to that. Here's how I would, and then you take your own spin on it. And that's been really cool to see her develop into it over this course of this last year, which has been really neat.
She has grown a lot, that is for sure.
She has. Yeah. So yes, I am in the, I like to say yes category. So I am leaning into that's not a priority for today. That's not a priority for this quarter, whatever it is, and really just focusing on those things that can truly, and this is, strictly speaking professionally, the things that can really move the needle in the area that we own, which I think is important.
Absolutely.
And just being present. Like, I know we talked a lot about presence already, but that's one thing people comment on when they talk about the relationship that she and I have. They were like, you spend a lot of time together. And we do. And I'm very conscious, as is she, about being present for her. And that's a great example. Like, I know probably everybody's going through some season of sickness, whether you have children or not. Really doesn't matter. I mean, it was like she didn't feel good. Then it was her husband. Then it was both of her kids. Like, you have to be present and make the choice to say, it's okay. Like, what can I take from you right now? So the delegation, I think, goes both ways. And also acknowledging that we're a team.
Yeah.
I consider her my partner. Like, oftentimes people will be like, oh, da-da-da-da-da. Like, how do you explain that relationship? I'm like, she is my partner.
Yeah.
Like, this is how,
very much so.
This is how we do things. Yeah. We're kind of like, married, air quotes, at work. And so you have to, it's never going to be 50-50. Sometimes I need to give 80 and she gives 20 because that's the day that we're having. Some days it's the opposite. Some days it's 50-50. So we have to check in with each other and say, like, what can you give today? What can I give today? Or over a period of time. And then we just tackle it from there. So being really vocal about that, I think, has been helpful this year.
Well, that's good. So we're reflecting as you think about this season at the end of the year. It's a great time for reflection.
Yeah.
How to your point, is this a winning year or a learning year? And I think it can be both, by the way, for sure. Because, one of my favorite sayings is that success is not a great teacher, failure is, but you can still learn from winning.
Certainly.
And you said something to your point before we started that I thought was interesting, which is you can either enter the new year better or bitter. The choice is yours. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think as a lot of people take time to reflect at the end of the year, if you didn't have your best year ever or things did not go exactly as planned, sometimes people will carry that bitterness and put that kind of almost that momentum into their new year.
The new year, yep.
And that really doesn't set you up for success for you to then have a winning year.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that it's important that you sit with yourself, even if that's the only question you answer. And if you don't like the other 3 questions we talked about, if the only question you answer is like, do I want to start the new year bitter or better? You make your choice. Like, again, you have to sit with that every day. I'm not sitting with it every day for you, but I think it's really important for you to have the opportunity to say, hey, like I choose better. I'm not going to be better going into the year. There's a reason. And someone said this to me, and I'm sure it's somebody famous at some point in time, and it's kind of like gotten morphed. I don't know exactly who started it or coined it or what have you, but it was like, there's a reason that your rear view mirror is smaller than your windshield. And so there's an opportunity for you to say, I'm going to put that in the rear view and I'm going to look forward through my windshield. And I'm choosing that this next day, this next year, this next quarter, this next project is going to be better. I'm not going to carry any bitterness that might spill over into the ability for me not to make this, a really great year coming up.
Yeah. No, the importance of being deliberate coming in the end of the year. And, one of the things I think that can help with that is, who do you surround yourself with and who's giving you feedback? Again, offline, we talked a little bit about a personal board of directors, the people in your life that kind of help you identify the blind spots. I mean, I will say in 2024, we had a pretty bad year business-wise by my standards, what my expectation was. And candidly, I did enter the year a little bitter and had to be called out on it, which it was a bit of a blind spot, honestly.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I was showing up that way. I knew what I was feeling internally and I was trying to fake it till I make it, but it wasn't working because I was showing up, in that bitterness. And it was the radical candor of, in this case, Audrey, a business partner, that came into my office one day and just said, I need to talk to you about something. And I was like, wow, okay, need to pay attention to this. And so talk a little bit about that concept, though, of a personal board of directors, and who would you put at the table, so to speak?
Sure.
If you were to build one.
Yeah, I think it's a really great idea, especially if you take time. A lot of people will take the couple of weeks around Christmas, like between Christmas and New Year's, and they're kind of getting their mindset ready for the new year. And this is one of those things that I would encourage if you've kind of exhausted other options and, you're like, hey, what is something potentially new I could instill? This is something that I think would really be helpful. And it is creating that personal board of directors. And I think there are 3 people that you would want, 4. There are 4 people or types of people that you would want part of that you would choose. Again, you're picking these people. But the first one, like you said, is the challenger. That's the person who practices radical candor with you no matter what, is calling you out, so to speak, when something is or is not working the way that you've stated who you are and how you want to show up. When you're showing up in a different way, that person is the one that's coming alongside you and is providing that light around that blind spot. The other person I would say is like the encourager. That's the person who reminds you of who you are. Like it might be somebody you've known for, 20 plus years, or it could be somebody you met, 2 weeks ago. But it's the person who reminds you who you are. And again, talking about wanting to be a human being, it reminds you you're a human being, right? And how you want to show up. And then I would say the other person would be the integrator. So that's the person who is like keeping things moving operationally. And that's very business focused. But you want to have somebody who's thinking through those processes and how to make it more efficient and having the opportunity to kind of be that business lens for you. And then the other category I would put in there would be something along the lines of a protector, somebody who is guarding your time and is helping you keep your boundaries. So we talked a lot about like the doing piece of things. So you have somebody that's on your personal board of directors that's like, hey, you said this was a boundary for you. And how can I help you make sure that we're protecting your time, your energy, where you're able to kind of pour back into people. And that goes back to the presence conversation.
Yeah.
So I think that really, if I kind of put those back, you want the challenger, you want the encourager, you want the protector, and you want the integrator if you're building out a personal board of directors. And I know you've done this in a couple of fashions over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple of things I'd add. I mean, Napoleon Hill wrote about this concept in Think and Grow Rich, which I read when I was like 21 years old. And it was, a mastermind group was another term for it, personal board of directors. And in his version of it, not everyone on the board needed to be somebody you physically had contact with. It could be somebody you had access to by reading their books but I think, specific to this conversation, those 4 people you mentioned, Amanda, probably are better suited to be live people in your life.
Mhm.
And, the last few years I've had that. I would say it's been seasonal. I have people in those categories, but I have in certain points in time physically pulled them together as a group to get some assistance, different seasons of life, mostly in the business side, but some personal. So I think those four are really important. And then back to Napoleon Hill idea, there could be other people that you add to that board of directors that are just kind of keep you from deceiving yourself, blowing past your blind spots, and again, helping you be the person you say you want to be, not just do.
Yeah. Well, and I think that those individuals and a combination of those who physically can be present for you or that you're leaning on from a reading or a listening perspective, they really help you create those small wins for yourself. But I also think that they're helping create small wins for the team and the community and the organization that you're a part of. And that's something really important to carry forward as you think about what you want to do in 2026. It's easy enough to have that conversation with your board of directors, go down the list of, okay, not only did I have a to-do list for this past year, but I had a what did I get done? So having that opportunity to sit there and reflect on that and getting input from that board of directors, like, was this truthful? Right? Did I really get all of these things done? Could there be anything that could carry forward into the new year? And then take 20 minutes, right, to align what you think your priorities, and I know we're talking about that in a plural sense, but what are your priorities to finish the year you're in strong? How can you eliminate the noise? And then what do you need to carry forward into 2026? And those people that you're leaning into can really provide you clarity around those blind spots that you might have, which I think can build great momentum and ultimately provide you with a really strong foundation, not a business plan, but a personal leadership plan, right?
Mhm.
And that's really what we're talking about right now. Like, you absolutely need to spend time doing your business planning, but from a perspective of you as a leader, an entrepreneur, have that time for yourself and really create that, what your leadership plan is going to look like for 2026.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, before the new year, what I'll do is, in EOS parlance, do a clarity break, couple hours. I'll kind of reflect on who was I this year and what are the things that I did that allowed me to be that person. I'll look at on the business side. I'm a maximizer on the strengths finder, so I'm always looking at what's not done, but it's the clarity break that forces me to say, well, what did we actually get done? Where did we make progress? Because I think it's easy for someone like me to look past that. I will look at, which I need to get out of my head, I'm probably going to do that this week, is all the things that in my mind didn't get done. And to your point, then it's a matter of, well, was it really a priority? And chances are it wasn't if it didn't get done, but it's still occupying mind space. So I'll write all that stuff out. And then once I look at that, I'll reflect on, okay, is this something that still needs attention in the new year? And if so, does it need to be incorporated in the business plan? And then on a personal level, again, my clarity break is going to be more about who do I want to be next year? And I have been doing personal plans for really since I was 20, 21 years old. I'm very fortunate that I have them all written out. I have a big file of them, and I have one now.
Your accomplishments letter.
Well, that's coming next. The accomplishments letter is really, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, it's taking myself to the end of 26. So end of 26, writing a letter as to what happened, as if it already happened. And that's a fun one. You just reminded me I need to go, not yet. I'll do this in December.
You got to find your 2025.
Well, I know where it is. That's the good news.
That's good.
As not well organized as I am, I know where I keep that. That one's digital now. Used to be paper, but it's digital, so it doesn't get lost. So yeah, I think these are just some practical tips that as a leader you can do to kind of get yourself, so to speak, close out this year and get yourself in the presence of the right headspace for the new year, and give yourself some grace that, there are certain things that just didn't get done. So that's part of what I do, but I know you've got a couple of other things you're going to be adding to that.
Yeah, well, I think it's just really important that, you have a choice as an individual, as a leader within your business to decide how you want to finish 2025 and how you want to start 2026. And I think that, out of all the things we talked about today, we'll be sure to put a link to the episode if you want to think about doing an accomplishments letter. That was something we leaned in heavily into as we started 2025 on the podcast this year. But I would pick one word or identity, and going back to what you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you want to be in this season right now as you close out the year for yourself, for your family, for the people that you surround every day, right? We spend so much time at work. It's really important to think about the global community, the people that you're a part of. Who do you want to be? Choose the one word. If you have not yet explored creating and identifying a board of directors, I think you should do that. And also communicate expectations around, if you're doing that live in person, say Amanda is asking Tim, I would like you to be the protector for me. Like, you need to explain what that is and set some expectations. So as you go into the new year, they know how to show up for you and how to be present for you. And then I think, really having the opportunity to decide, was 2025 a winning year or a learning year? You need to celebrate both and then take that opportunity to that 20 minutes where you're really defining what you want 2026 to look like. And there's lots of tools that you can do that with, but you can either start it bitter or better. And I hope that you lean into the opportunity to say better, and that, you really have, the chance to make a difference for those that, both internally for yourself, but also for the people that you're around. And we're just really grateful that we have a platform like this to talk about the things that we do. We've learned a lot along the way of things that work and don't work. And we hope that through this conversation, you took away a couple of items that can help you really lean into your leadership internally and then externally as you begin to not let the hustle of this season take away from all the great time and moments and peace that you have with those that are part of your organizations.
Yeah, and I trust we covered a lot of ground today. And for our listeners, this is our last episode of 2025. We are going to start back up in January, the new year, with new content. But for now, we just want to express our gratitude to you for being on this journey with us. Certainly, Amanda, I want to express my gratitude to you as co-host of this endeavor we started 5 years ago. And we had an opportunity. I was the presenter, but you were very much part of the message and putting the presentation together. As everyone said, there's no way Tim put this together on his own. And I admitted that. A recent presentation we made at C12 on this topic of, foundational cultural elements. I know we'll cover that next year in this podcast, but yeah, it's been great for those that are joining us on the journey. There's some real practical points here that we've applied. We've helped other people apply that make a meaningful difference in your life. So we trust you'll trust us and try these things and spend the time, take the reflection time, be intentional, be deliberate, and set yourself up for a great year in 2026.
It's perfect. And we look forward to being back with everybody in the new year. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Winning Through Culture.
Until next time, stay intentional, be impactful,
Because your culture matters.